Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe. This is the news on Thursday, the 9th of November. We have got Ten Hag coming out, all guns blazing after the game last night against Copenhagen. Finally, some would say, fighting back against some of these refereeing decisions that we have seen, looking defiant, standing actually with a bit of confidence about his performance as a coach, Man United's performance in those first 25 minutes before the red card. And also standing against some of the refereeing decisions that we've seen in this game. We'll get into all of that. We've also got the latest on a potential change to some of the Premier League rules allowing loans and players to be transferred between clubs owned by the same organisation, which surely that was banned already. We'll be getting into that. And also, Rasmus Hojlund has been speaking about whether Ten Hag has still got the dressing room. Another defeat for Manchester United last night. No denying that, now in a dire situation in the Champions League, although weirdly, only 1 point off second because of the games we've still got to play. It's going to be very, very difficult to qualify from the group in the Champions League. But Ten Hag has come out and actually criticised and fought back against some of the refereeing decisions we saw yesterday. And let's just get straight into it. Hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit like on this video as well. You may not like the result last night, but for me, weirdly, I woke up this morning feeling a lot less gutted, a lot less upset than I have after some of the recent results. Because that's where we are as United fans now, by the way. It's not about winning, it's about how bad was the loss. And for me, this is probably one of the best losses we've had all season. So let's get into this. Ten Hag says, the red card changes everything. I think when you freeze frame it, it always looks so much worse. And I say, it takes them so long and they make a red card of it. Come on, the first 25 minutes we dictated, dominated the game. We went 2-0 up and then the red card changes everything. We are down to 10 and we are very disappointed. We conceded 2 goals before half-time, which should never count. The first is offside. A player is in front of Andre Onana. And if we're giving offside goals for the Harry Maguire one, where he's not in front of the goalkeeper, he doesn't touch the ball, he doesn't stop the opposition from touching the ball, and then the ball gets squared across the goal by by Garnacho, and McTominay puts it into the back post. If that's offside, why isn't one where he's stood in front of the keeper in an offside position offside? I don't want it to get to this point. Personally, and I'll get into more of these quotes because he goes in a little bit on the refs, I don't want it to get to the point where those handballs we saw last night are penalties. Neither the Maguire one or the one we got were penalties. But when one is, both is. I don't want it to get to the point where Maguire's goal was disallowed. Maguire had that goal disallowed because he was in an offside position. I don't think football should be there. But if that's offside, why isn't the one last night offside? It's this thing, we set this precedent that no one agrees with. We all think it's too soft, it's too strict, and yet it gets repeated in another game and it doesn't get given. Rasmus Hojlund against Manchester City. I don't want that to be a penalty. But if it is, why isn't the Gabriel one against Arsenal a penalty? That's what I don't understand. And I hate this. Consistency is all we ask for. And it's not, actually. I want good refereeing. I want better standard of refereeing, not just consistency. I want that to not be a penalty. But if you are telling me it's a penalty, if you are saying that Maguire stopped the goal against Fulham being given, that should have been disallowed last night as well. The second is a penalty that's very harsh. The ball on the hand, but it's so close and the hand is in such a normal position. Maguire went for the ball and the ref needs such a long time. That is in 4 games, 4 penalties against us, and I say 3 are very debatable. I'm very disappointed about such decisions. The game is never meant to be like this. This has nothing to do with football. Decisions have to be made, and I accept also wrong decisions are made by some at this level. 3 tough decisions tonight. You control the game, and the game is never meant to be for that. Also, Ten Hag was pleased by the character shown by his players in the face of adversity. This squad is resilient, and the whole season, so many decisions are against us, so many setbacks for injuries. I said to the lads, it will turn. One moment in the season, it will turn in our favour. I just think, I know, if we've got sort of Postecoglou on one end talking about how, he's not going to criticise refs, and you've got Arteta at one end, we've sort of got the kind of the baby bear Goldilocks Ten Hag in the middle there, where he's not going ballistic and losing his head like Arteta did, but he is actually coming out and saying these decisions are bad. And I like, to a large degree, I like how Ten Hag doesn't always criticise referees and doesn't come out and screaming and shouting. And, I think sometimes Arteta is almost sort of embarrassing with the language he uses and the way he expresses himself. But I also like that Ten Hag is putting a bit of pressure on here. United have had terrible decisions against us this season. And Onana not giving a foul against Wolves, not giving a penalty away against Wolves. And since then, everyone's gone, well, you had the Onana one. So, you can't complain. There's been about 14 decisions that could go either way that have gone against United this season. And I think it's good for me that Ten Hag is finally fighting back a little bit. And it's not just excuses, because there's a difference between calling something out that's nonsense, making excuses so that you don't have to take the blame, and actually looking at a situation and saying, this is rubbish. There are two completely different things, and I think anyone who doesn't have a vendetta can see there's a massive difference between those two things, and Ten Hag coming out after this game is well within his rights, and I'm glad to see that he's finally doing it. Moving on to our next story then, Rasmus Hojlund has spoken about how Ten Hag still has the dressing room at Manchester United. These are the things that get called into question. The sorts of results we've seen recently could be the beginning of the end for a football manager at Manchester United, and in the past have been. The difference to me so far is how the players have performed and responded. That first 25 minutes, up until the red card, is, like Ten Hag said it himself, the best we've played all season. That, to me, wasn't the performance of a team that have abandoned their manager. And Rasmus Hojlund reiterates this. He says, he's a really good coach. He cares about every single detail. He helps me a lot. He gives me a lot of confidence and supports me. I think every player in the dressing room supports him. I hope it's just a matter of time before, obviously, results get better. The first 30 minutes today was some of the best football we've been playing all season. And he's right, and we need that. We need to see improvements. And weirdly, even though it's another loss, even though it's another set of bizarre circumstances and sort of almost farcical series of events, we saw an improvement against Copenhagen. Again, like I said, it's getting pretty desperate when we're at the point where this was probably one of our best losses all season. It's not much to cling on to. But in a season and in a start to a season that's been so ravaged by injuries, controversies on and off the pitch, all sorts going on, to see the players in the squad looking like they have a better understanding of the tactics, looking more willing to implement those tactics, looking more able to implement those tactics, that is a massive step in the right direction for me. Get your thoughts in the comments. Am I just out of my head for not being that gutted after the result last night? The result itself is gutting, of course, but for me, I saw a lot of positives from that performance, and the sort of positives that I was starting to worry we wouldn't see again under Ten Hag. I didn't think, I was starting to question, will we see a tactical system and a plan be implemented by this team? And I'm glad to say that we did, at least until that red card. Let's move on to our next story then. This is David Ornstein yesterday evening. Premier League clubs to vote on banning loans between associated parties for January window. If approved, potential deals like Ruben Neves from Al Hilal to Newcastle will be blocked. It's a temporary measure until a long-term solution agreed. Firstly, this is an absolute no-brainer, especially when you consider this isn't like, sort of two small teams kind of helping each other out. This is one of the most wealthy countries on the planet buying players to avoid FFP and loaning them to their own other teams. That is not the same thing. This has to be stopped. I can't believe that this wasn't stopped already. I thought it was the case that you weren't allowed to own multiple football clubs as an owner, but obviously people just get around that. This has to stop, because otherwise you risk the likes of Newcastle, Newcastle in particular, obviously being owned by the Saudi government essentially, the same people who own most of the Saudi League or all of the Saudi League, and in particular certain clubs. You could see Neymar at Newcastle. You could see Ruben Neves at Newcastle. You could see Benzema at Newcastle. They could just loan them, switch them back and forth, do what you want, with no ramifications due to FFP. That can't be allowed to happen. And with the increasing amount of sort of investment, and you look how Qatar held the World Cup, Saudi Arabia to hold the World Cup, these sort of nations that are only increasing their investment and their interest in football, who are kind of outside of the purview of UEFA. We saw it with Frank Lampard going to play for Man City when he played for New York. The difference there being, of course, that Frank Lampard was past his best. I know that obviously doesn't make it any better, in terms of technicalities, but he was past his best. This is the first time we're potentially seeing it with some of the best players in the world being kind of freely dragged around Europe and across the continent because they're owned by the same clubs. They're owned by the same people. That, to me, can't be allowed to happen. I think that has to be a first step in getting rid of that. I think it's a no-brainer, isn't it? No one would. I don't see any reason why that should be allowed to happen. So we'll give you the update on that as soon as that result for that vote is in. I can't imagine anyone except Newcastle is voting to keep that. So we will take it from there. That is going to be all from me. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of Ten Hag finally fighting back against some of these decisions we've seen? Finally standing up and saying, United have had it hard this season. It's not necessarily bias. It's not necessarily that. But just look at the decisions we've had. We've had so many that have gone against us and so few that have gone for us. Like, it's just ridiculous at this point. But for me, like I said before, some signs of positivity after that game against Copenhagen, despite losing to a team that is playing in the Danish league. How the hell did we get here? You tell me. Hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll be back this afternoon for Off the Bar as well. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you stick around to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe. This is the news. We'll see you in a bit.